Heslin, is there a risk we end up here with metaverses which are like walled gardens, the great fear of the early internet, as opposed to being this vast and decentralized network of networks? I mean, I'd like to stay with this interoperability, interconnectivity point, because it strikes me as a very important one. And Henry's referred to oracles of what you do. How are these metaverses going to hook up to each other?
I think I'm going to change my LinkedIn title now to Oracles. That's what I do. I love that. But I think the Web 2.0, Web 3.0 discussion in terms of the walled gardens and where things are headed with regard to that. I think in the Web 2 era, it's much more difficult when you have centralized databases and private data that you're not willing to share with others to create these kind of worlds and economies like Henry is talking about that are all going to have their own tokens, that are all going to have their own internal economies. And how would you bridge these together? It definitely works more so in the Web 3.0 space when you're aiming for decentralization and you do have these mechanisms and infrastructure in place for this cross-chain compatibility, for what we do at Super Oracles with bridging real world data or even data from public blockchains between one another. So even in the blockchain space, you have these typically disjunct and siloed ecosystems as per different public blockchains. The necessity of an oracle is to have those chains communicate with one another, and as well as pulling any kind of real world data, such as your pricing data feeds for forex, precious metals, commodities, even things like sports data, weather data, interest rate swaps data, and bringing that on chain to create interesting derivative products out of that. Now, that would be applicable in the metaverse, I think, in a Web 3.0 infrastructure, because you've got all these really interesting in-depth experiences for virtualized social media. And when you have social media, people like to give in-depth like experiences, very detailed characterizations of who they would like to be. Right. And the metaverse, I think, is this potential identity layer in a virtual space where people can now utilize NFTs. They can use digital items to represent who they would like to be in a virtual world. Right. And when you have these kind of NFTs, you have these virtual land plots, you have all this different data that may be sitting on chain. There's some very interesting analytics that can be built out of that. And how would you port that over into a dashboard? To be able to streamline all that, to clean it and filter it and make something actionable out of it for any kind of, consumer data or marketable data that you could gather from the metaverse. So that would be the Oracle use case, and the ability to bridge this information from metaverse to metaverse, if it is in a Web3 infrastructure, would, benefit greatly from having an Oracle combine all these different segments. And that would be up to the metaverse owners or the DAO or governance model of how these different sectors are going to connect to other potential players in the space. So I really do think it leads up to Web 2.0, Web 3.0, and kind of where the infrastructure is going to lay with regards to that.